message. Mine's New Living Translation, so it might sound a little different. I think it's good to hear it a few ways. When I was a kid and I heard this, I only heard it, I think, King James Version. So whichever way that you know this, we can kind of pray this together and then just go into the message. Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13. And I'm going to read the verse right before, which Jesus is teaching and talking with his disciples. I guess I'll read from verse 7. It says, "When you pray, don't babble on as the Gentiles do. They think their prayers are answered merely by repeating their words again and again. Don't be like them, for your Father knows exactly what you need before you even ask him." And then, got the prayer right here. "Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. May your kingdom come soon. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today the food that we need, and forgive us our sins as we have forgiven those who sin against us. And don't let us yield to temptation, but rescue us from the evil one." And so I think that verse right before, where he says, "Don't be like them, for your Father knows exactly what you need before you ask." They were just kind of repeating stuff without really thinking about it. And what's ironic is you can do that with the Lord's Prayer. You can just think it's like a magical thing and just say it and think like, oh, everything's going to be fixed now. But I think Jesus was kind of more giving them like a template, right? So he's saying, first and foremost, we want to keep God's name holy, keep God first place in our life. Then he kind of goes down and says, may your kingdom come soon, something we should all be praying and hoping for. You don't have to pray about that the same way every time you pray. And then he says, may your will be done on earth. And that's kind of connecting to the message that we're going to dive into in a second here. On earth as it is in heaven. So doing things God's way, not the world's way, not our selfish way that we do things on our own. And then the rest is, a lot of it's just dealing with sin and temptation and evil. So I don't know about you guys, but I forget to pray about that stuff sometimes, but there's a lot of chances to do some evil stuff if you find them even if you're not looking for it. So if Jesus is telling us we should be praying about that, we definitely should. So I just wanted to start with that, and then I'm going to do the reading like I normally do if my dad were here. And then I'll share after that. So the message is actually in John chapter 15. So if you flick just a little bit to the right of where you just were, you should be able to find it pretty soon, or just type it in your phone. And this is the passage about the vine and the branches. And I've been thinking about this a lot. When my dad he called me this morning like 30 minutes before we were going to leave for church and told me he wasn't feeling good, I was trying to think of like, what's something that I've been thinking about enough or know well enough that I could share something on it. And this has just been something I've been reading and thinking about a lot. So that's why I picked it, and I'm going to go ahead and read it. You can follow along if you want. This is Jesus speaking. The whole chapter is Jesus' words. "I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so that they will produce even more fruit. You have already been pruned and purified by the message I have given you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it's severed from the vine. And you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. Yes, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who remain in me, and I in them, will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. But if you remain in me, and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want, and it will be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great joy to my Father. I have loved you even as the Father has loved me. Remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you are remaining in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way that I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are called my friends since I have told you everything that the Father has told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you, and I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask using my name. This is my commandment. Love each other. If the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. The world would love you as one of its own if you belonged to it, but you are no longer part of the world. I chose you to come out of the world, so it hates you. Do you remember what I told you? A slave is not greater than the master. Since they persecuted me, naturally they will persecute you. And if you had listened to me, and if they had listened to me, they would listen to you. They will do all this to you because of me. For they have rejected the one who sent me. They would not be guilty if I had not come and spoken to them, but now they have no excuse for their sin. Anyone who hates me also hates my Father. If I hadn't done such miraculous signs among them that no one else could do, they would not be guilty. But as it is, they have seen everything I did, and yet they still hate me and my Father. This fulfills what is written in their scriptures. They hated me without a cause. But I will send you the Advocate, the Holy Spirit of truth, and he will come to you from the Father and will testify all about me. You must also testify about me because you have been with me from the beginning of my ministry. All right, so that's John 15. I think what started me thinking about this was we did a skateboard ministry trip to Italy to help a church connect with the skate park that's right next to it. And Jess went with me, and a couple of our other friends like Kyle Brush, some of you guys might know. He's spoken at Skate Church and stuff. And we actually got to hang out with a would he be a winemaker? I don't know what the right term for it is, but this guy had a vineyard. He was a pastor, had a vineyard, and he basically tills through and removes all the dead branches. He was going through with a tractor and just kind of picking up all the dead branches, and we got to go and visit his vineyard and see him do all this stuff. I put a little video of him talking on my YouTube. If you're interested in seeing it, I can send it to you. But that's what really got me thinking, because I was like, whoa, this isn't a made-up thing. There's actually people that do this for a job, and when Jesus was giving this illustration, they would have known exactly what he was talking about, because it was a common thing. And so ever since just being in that vineyard, I've been thinking about this a lot. And just reflecting on Jesus' words, I want to see if anybody wants to answer these questions. If you don't, that's fine. But what does a branch do? Does anybody want to say something? It's okay if it's silly or if you...
Bears fruit.
Bears fruit? Yeah, it makes fruit. And it, does it have to do that on its own? Does it have arms or work for that?
Leaves nourishes the tree.
Yeah. Anybody else got any comments? I think you know where I'm getting at, but the branch just kind of drinks, right? It just is taking from the vine, and everything that comes out of the branch is actually coming from the vine. And then another thing, if you read the Bible, you notice Jesus compares us to sheep a lot, and thinking about what sheep do, and they don't really do a lot of impressive stuff, I don't think. Like, I don't see a sheep like fighting to protect the other sheep, right? That's why they need a shepherd. They're not like doing a bunch of epic stuff. They're kind of just like eating and sleeping and growing fuzz on their body, being cute, you know. They're not like doing any super hard, crazy work or anything like that. And I was thinking about that because you can look at people that are missionaries or whatever, doing hard sacrificial stuff and maybe think, I need to work harder, I need to do more stuff, I need to be more Christian, I need to never sin again, I need to like not swear. I don't know if you guys remember a message, I think it might have been last week or the week before, where my dad was saying, he said he was never going to swear again. And then he pulled out of the garage and like snapped the mirror off and he started swearing. And that's kind of, I think, how it feels to try to bear fruit in just the vine, right? Like you're trying to do all these good things in your own power. And a lot of times I think it's stuff that God is not asking us to do. It's stuff we want to do to feel better about ourselves. And I know I've definitely done that where I'm like, oh, I feel like crap about myself. If I help this person, I'm going to feel better. But that's not a good motivation, right? That's a selfish motivation. And I think that this whole chapter is kind of about that, like how silly it is when we're trying to kind of fabricate this like righteousness of our own or these good works of our own. And so if we're not supposed to go out and work super hard and figure everything out, then what do we do, right? Like, what's our job? We want to bear fruit. We want to be a good reflection of our Father. And what I was thinking about is, like, we're really just supposed to, like, wait for God then. You know, we're supposed to rest in Him and trust Him, which is really simple. It's actually a lot easier. And it makes me think of Jesus saying, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He's not asking us to do all this crazy hard work. He's actually just saying, you guys just need to trust me. That's pretty much it. I want you to like wait for me, and whatever I'm asking you to do, you're already going to have all the skills to do. You're going to have all the knowledge you need to do it. You just need to wait for me, like wait for my signal. And that's hard to do for some reason. It seems like, oh, that's nice. I don't have to do all this stuff. I can just wait on God, but it's actually pretty tough. It's tough for me because I have a lot of energy as a person. I like to do things, and Jess will tell you I don't always rest as much as I should. She's been teaching me how to relax like the whole time we've been married. I'm still working on it, but it's hard. It's hard to just sit and wait and like trust God and not worry, to not try to figure everything out in your head, try to make a plan for how you're gonna make yourself holy. It's hard to not do that. But there will be a struggle, and the struggle is to rest in Him. But if we abide in Him, we will bear fruit, and it will be fruit that lasts. So sometimes that stuff that we do in our own power to try to be good, it will produce something, right? Like if you help someone, they might be like, oh, thank you. But it might not be the best version of what you could do. Sometimes that thing that you're doing that isn't right is at the cost of something better that God's wanting you to do. And an example I've seen of this in my own life, of people I know, is maybe they're trying to like, we need to do more youth events. They're a pastor and they're trying to like crank out these events to get more numbers so they can say, we got 20 kids got saved at the summer camp, but they're neglecting their family. Like maybe God's like, I want you to go take your wife out to dinner. I want you to go throw a baseball in the backyard with your son. But they're like, no, I got to do all this ministry. I need to make sure people are getting saved and do all this stuff. And that might look good for a little while, but if 10 years down the road you're getting a divorce, it's not fruit that lasts, right? There was something better that you were called to do that maybe you weren't patient or trusting enough to do. And I think that's where our real work lies. Our work is to wait and trust and say, wow, it doesn't look like I'm doing much here, but I'm going to just trust God. He said that He would, He had good works for us. I don't know where the passage is, but there's a passage that says God has created good works before the beginning of time for us to walk in. So these good works are out there, but we have to wait. We don't get we don't get an email that says like on November 12th, you are going to go move your grandma's couch for her. You have to just wait. You don't actually get to know all that stuff ahead of time. You can't plan it out in your own power. So that makes it tough. I was listening to a message with Jess this morning, and the guy gave this example. He was trying to like show how powerful Jesus' words would have been to them, and he was saying like, what if there was a branch on the ground? Like there's a big storm, a branch cracks off your tree, and then you take that branch and you're like, I'm gonna make this grow apples. And you have this broken branch that was in your yard, and you're trying to get that to grow apples. You're pouring water on it, you're doing all this stuff. It's not gonna work, right? It's not attached to the tree anymore. No apples are gonna come. But that's kind of what we do in our life sometimes, where we have this branch we really like and we're trying to get something to come from it. But it's not gonna work. If it's not coming from God, if it's not coming from this tree that's rooted into the ground and has life coming from it, it's just not going to be anything lasting. So yeah, that's silly, right? We wouldn't do that. That would be ridiculous, but we kind of do that in our own ways in our lives. I want to go to verse 2 again really quick. Hopefully I still have that tabbed here. Okay, yeah, I do. It's good. So, 15 verse 2, it says, He cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and He prunes the branches that do bear fruit, so they will produce even more fruit. And I was thinking about this because if I have a branch on me that's producing a little bit of fruit, I'm usually kind of content with it. I'm like, this is great. Look at my pear I made here. This is awesome. But then God comes along and He's like, if we trim this here, you're actually going to make 2 pears next year if we take care of this now. And then I'm like, no. I like this pear I got already. And so we kind of do that in our lives sometimes too. I can feel, even through just being a new dad, there's stuff where maybe my life was producing fruit in one way before, and I kind of want to cling to that. But God always has a better way, and if I can trust Him and just be like, all right, I'm not going to try to do what I was doing before, I'm going to do whatever you have for me now, then if Jesus' words are true, I'm going to bear more fruit than I did before, because He's cutting away the stuff that isn't producing anything, and then He's making the stuff that is producing something produce even more stuff. And so that's something we have to be ready for too, because I don't think all of us want to be doing more, producing more fruit all the time. Sometimes we're just cool with our little thing we have going, and we don't really want God to mess with it. Because that can be painful, right? Shedding something off of your life that you don't need, but maybe you like, that can be painful. But it will produce eternal fruit. So yeah, the vine dresser does 2 things, and they're to kind of like maximize us to be able to be actually who God made us, not like some lesser version. And so that gets maximum fruit production, getting rid of the unfruitful branches, and then pruning the ones that anything we have that is producing something good, He's going to prune that as well. And He does that because He loves us, not because He's like, some dad that's like trying to live through their kid as an athlete or something like that. It's an actual genuine love that it's like, I want you to be to the full potential of what I made you to be. God's not mean. Just because there might be pain in our lives, it doesn't mean God is mean or He's trying to hurt us. And a great example of that is Jesus Himself going to the cross. That was painful for Him. Even though He was God in the flesh, He said, if there's another way, God, just let me know. I don't want to do this. He was trying basically everything, any option that He could have to not go to the cross. He wanted it, but it was the Father's choice for him to take up the cross, and so he still did it, even though it was painful. And, you know, that is a weird thing to think about, Jesus doing that, but there's a verse that I wanted Andy to read, if he's still up for it, that is pretty cool. You got it, Tab? You want to come up here and read it, or you want to read it from where you're at? Either way is good. And this just kind of ties into all this stuff, so I'll have Andy read that real quick.
Go ahead, everybody.
Lord.
Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God.
Thank you.
So that's Hebrews 12:2, and I don't know if you guys caught that last part, but it says, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. So there was great joy, actually, for Jesus in doing this, knowing that it would set us free and cause us to be connected to the Father. He endured all that pain and sorrow, and for us taking up our cross in our life, it's going to look different than it did for Jesus, but it's going to be the same type of stuff. There's going to be things that God calls us to do that might be painful or hard, but we have great joy knowing that there's this communion in obeying the Father and in walking with him. The result is always going to be better than what you would do on your own. It's always better. Things you didn't think of. We wake up and most of the time think about ourselves, or at least I do. And that's why reading the Bible is important. Praying is important, because we can remember, oh yeah, I'm going to be in contact with all these people today that are having a hard time. And God cares about all those people. God doesn't just care about me. He cares about your coworkers. He cares about your family members. He's thinking about all those people, and he wants to produce this good fruit in us that is able to be consumed by those around us. And a tree doesn't necessarily eat its own fruit, right? Like, the apple tree doesn't reach its branch out and pick an apple and eat it through its tree mouth. It's for other people, right? This fruit that God is producing in us is for other people. And so we can have great joy knowing that God is going to produce in us blessings for other people and obedience that pleases him. And it's like a chance for us to really actually be like Jesus in our lives. So verse 5, flip over to that now. John 15:5 says, yes, I'm the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And the longer you live, I think the more clear that becomes. You can waste a lot of time trying to do things apart from God, but there's no benefit. So we can shelf that and just wait on God, trust him, look at the skills he's given us, look at the talents that he's given us. Anything we've learned, any wisdom we have is all because God allowed us to have it. And so instead of trying to produce this fruit on our own, we can just say, okay, God, you made me this way. I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to work with what you've given me instead of trying to do what someone else is doing or something I think looks better than that. That will create, if we can work with him, will create fruit that's of eternal value instead of just the short-term junky stuff that we make on our own. I want to look at verse 7 as well. Right here, there's two conditions given for answered prayer. And they are abiding in Jesus and then his word abiding in us. So that means spending time with him, being mindful that he's with you, but then also having his word stored up in your heart. Jesus learned God's word as a person just as we do. And if he did it, then we definitely got to do it, And he didn't have the Bible app. He had to go memorize it and go to whatever the temple or whatever they had. There was like one giant scroll, separate scrolls for the books that they had to go read and memorize and learn and repeat over and over and over again. And I think we almost have a disadvantage that we have so many Bibles and apps because we're like, oh, I can check it out later. Or like, I'll memorize this when I'm older. And then we just never do it because we have unlimited access. But when they had barely any access, I feel like they valued it more. So use that stuff. If you got a bunch of Bibles in your house, read them. And that word in your heart will help you obey easier and quicker, and it will help you to abide in Jesus to create fruit that lasts. And what he's basically saying in this verse is that if you start abiding in Jesus and you have his word abiding in you, you will start to desire what God desires, and your prayers will be answered because you're not going to just like pray for $500 gift card to Best Buy or whatever to spend on yourself. You might actually start praying for other people because God cares about other people. God doesn't just care about you. He cares about other people. But I think on our own, we can only get $500 Best Buy gift cards. That's our only desire is like me stuff. And I like to think I'm not selfish, but when I'm not actively thinking about other people or God or what he wants to do, I revert to like, man, I really want a sandwich right now. I want to take a nap. I want to leave work right now. This person's annoying me. I revert to all that stuff. But when you have God's word in you and you're reflecting on how other people feel and how God cares about other people, we're more likely to think, oh yeah, maybe I should pray for that person instead of just myself. So yeah, we all kind of suck in that way, but we can work on it, and God will work on us and help us to do work that actually matters, not just the like, oh, I'm feeling bad about myself, so I better do something good real quick to cover it up. But he'll help us to actually do things that last and matter. And we just need to take in his word, rest in him, trust in him, spend time with him. All the things we know we should do, but a lot of times we don't do. Couple more things, almost done here. I want to go to verses 10 and 11 in here. And this is kind of going to connect back to what Andy read in Hebrews 12 too. Let's see here. Okay, it says, I have loved you even as the Father has loved me. Remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. So, Jesus, he had some tough stuff happen. He was murdered. A lot of people around him were killed. A lot of people didn't like the stuff he was saying, weren't real big fans of him. But he had great joy amidst all those hard things and amidst the sorrow. And he says if we abide in him, our joy will overflow. And we can start to see problems more as like opportunities to be a blessing or to like have a good attitude. I had an encouragement yesterday. Somebody told me that the way I responded to something bad happened to me encouraged them, and it made me happy because a lot of times I don't respond well. And Jess and I were just talking about this. We don't have a lot of control in life, right? Like, you could wake up tomorrow and the electricity in your house could be out. No Wi-Fi. You could wake up and your car doesn't start. You could not wake up at all. All this stuff is out of our control. But you do have control over how you react to what happens to you. And so when we react well, when we say, oh shoot, my fly's down, I spilled coffee on my pants, I stubbed my toe on the gazebo, or I don't know, whatever. Stuff that makes you mad. When we respond well to that, I think that shows there's something different in us. Like, oh, you have God's word in you, and you have God's spirit in you, so what comes out isn't going to be just like freak out or complaining or whatever. It's like we can have joy and like maybe laugh or say like, oh man, that's silly, I did that, or God's gonna work this out even though my car's not starting. Like today will be different, you know. I'm excited to see what the day is going to bring now that I can't drive my car or whatever it is. Because if we believe John 15, as long as we're connected up to the Father, it's going to go well. There's going to be fruit that's eternal, that remains. So that's really our one job. Like, we don't have to figure everything out. The sheep don't lead the shepherd. They don't have to figure out where to find food. The shepherd does all of that for them. He leads them to water so they can drink. I read something about shepherds that they would find like little notches in caves, and they would bring the sheep in there, and the shepherd would sleep in front of the door so that if any wolves came, the shepherd was blocking the door, that the sheep would be safe. And you know, Jesus said that he's the good shepherd and he lays down his life for the sheep. So we got to just remind ourselves of that and trust in that. And then no matter what bad stuff happens, you know, even like my dad being sick this morning, I'm sure he could have freaked out. But whatever bad stuff happens, we can trust. All I need to do is abide in God, and he's going to take care of it. I don't have to figure it all out. I can just trust in him, and it's going to work out, even if it takes a long time. And that's the last thing I want to say is just that, you know, our phones and drive-thrus and all this stuff hasn't helped us to wait on God. We want things to happen quick. And in my experience, a lot of the stuff God's done in my life has taken a long time, and it's been really slow. So I just say that as an encouragement. Like, if the stuff you're praying for isn't happening immediately, doesn't mean something's wrong with you. If you're connected up with God and you're, you know, praying for things that are actually to someone's benefit, for someone to be healed or for them to know Jesus, just because it's not happening right away, it doesn't mean that God's not hearing you or that it's not going to happen. Some things just take a lot of time. So be patient and just trust that God will work it out. And that's all I had to share. Mom, did you have any announcements or anything like that? Thank you guys. Thanks for listening. And hopefully my dad will be back next week. I think he'll be feeling better by then.